Luke, I want to show you what Adam Kinzinger said when asked if he would agree to serve on the committee. Let's watch. We'll talk about it on the other side.
So I'll be voting for this today. It's not my favorite option, but the point is we can't keep pretending like January 6th didn't happen. If I'm asked to serve on it, I'm going to consider it. I haven't been asked. It's not necessarily anything I'd look forward to doing. But if I thought that, my voice was needed to get to the bottom of it, it would be something I would be open to.
So, Luke, you've got at least one Republican willing to serve if asked. Do you have any information on the latest in terms of who Speaker Pelosi is considering for her picks?
I don't. The Speaker's office is still playing this really close to the chest. Obviously, the two Republicans who voted for the committee today, Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, would be likely options. You have, 5 picks from the Republican leader, Kevin McCarthy, that Speaker Pelosi is supposed to consider. But I'm not sure if he's going to put those forward, how long that'll take, and then if Ms. Pelosi will go ahead and just offer up her own suggestions. But it does seem like it might be down to just those two people who would want to do it. Other possible candidates, such as Katko, have already said he was unlikely to want to serve on this committee. So it does seem like even the support for this investigation is getting smaller and smaller as time goes on. You initially had 35 Republicans who are in favor of the commission, and now that's, we're down to 2 for this committee.
And in some ways, Sam Stein, it doesn't matter what Republicans in the House say. The committee will go forward. It will have vast and sweeping subpoena power. It will be able to compel the kind of document production that the Benghazi committee was able to compel. And I believe one of the Whitewater committees before that, a powerful investigative body will begin investigating all of the unknowns of the attacks of January 6th. Your thoughts on where the speaker goes from here?
So I think the bigger question right now is what McCarthy strategizes here. I go back to that Benghazi committee. When that was formed in 2016, there was a real question mark as to whether Leader Pelosi would place Democrats on the committee or suggest, or whether she would boycott it in an attempt to just paint it as some sort of partisan exercise. For a brief period of time, people probably don't remember this, there was a movement on the online left to just put one Democrat, Alan Grayson, on the committee to be just a completely disruptive force. Eventually, Pelosi made the decision, the calculation, that it was better to have a seat at the table, to know what was coming, to potentially influence the way where the committee went, and to have insight into its work product than it was to just be on the outside looking in. Arguably, she made the right call. The Benghazi committee did, of course, last for a while, but Democrats generally knew where the committee was heading, what kind of subpoenas it was going to issue, and so forth. McCarthy faces a similar choice now. Does he want to be a participant in a committee that will go on with or without? Does he want a seat at the table? Does he want insight into what's going to happen? And if so, because Pelosi has a veritable veto power over his suggestions, who would he put on there that could get by her screening? So, the real question marks now are on McCarthy, not Pelosi. Pelosi's going to take her time. She'll find the right people to put on there. The committee will progress. But McCarthy has to decide how much he wants to engage in this, or whether he wants to just make that play and say, this is a partisan show trial.
I think, Claire McCaskill, there's real peril in the right making this as political as what Luke and Sam's reporting suggests they are at least seriously considering doing. I mean, the American people saw an attack in the United States Capitol. The American people saw the vice president rushed out and his family by the United States Secret Service. The American people saw Democratic and Republican lawmakers hiding and crouching and running for their lives. I think the American people would like to see a bipartisan investigation into how that came to be.
I would love to be in a room with all of the Republicans that voted for the independent commission, but then voted against this select committee today. That shows you how Trump is closing the ranks of this party. Many of these same Republicans that voted against this commission are also welcoming into their tent, really, the seamy underbelly of America in terms of Nazi sympathizers and Holocaust deniers and white supremacists. So if you compare and contrast Benghazi with this, and I hate to do this to my friend Sam, but I never get to correct him. The committee was actually formed in 2014. And that was, almost 2 years after Benghazi occurred. And there were still more Democrats that voted for the Select Committee on Benghazi than there were today. Republicans voting, and compare these two events. Most Americans knew that it was a terribly tragic thing that happened at Benghazi, but they didn't live it. They didn't watch their nation's capital overrun with people beating police officers and throwing things at police officers and breaking windows and trashing offices and trashing the Senate chamber. They didn't have that kind of hard drive about what happened in Benghazi. So the notion that these Republicans think they can get away with turning this into a Fox echo chamber by just denying the American people the opportunity to look at it, I think is terribly naive. And if they decide to participate, as the Democrats decided to on Benghazi, I think they're going to look silly if they put the nutballs on the committee, like, the QAnon lady and, the guy that loves the Nazi sympathizers and all those Congress folks.